So, Los Angeles has this, well, it's a huge paradox on its hands. On one side, you've got this desperate need for more housing, and on the other, hundreds of office buildings, strip malls, just sitting there half empty. It's a classic urban puzzle. But what if those empty buildings aren't just a problem? What if they're actually the key to the solution? What if we could transform them, breathe new life into these old bones and create thousands of homes in the process? Okay, let's really break this down. You have the housing shortage that, let's be honest, every Angelino feels every single day. And then you have this, a staggering 50 million square feet of empty commercial space. That is just an enormous pipeline of potential just sitting there waiting to be unlocked. Now, this whole idea of converting old buildings, it might sound brand new, but it's really not. In fact, it's built on a super successful experiment that started over 2 decades ago. It proved that this concept could absolutely work, and on a massive scale. Just think about this number for a second. 12,000. That's how many apartments were carved out of old, historic office buildings because of the original 1999 law. It basically sparked a residential renaissance in downtown LA and proved that these projects were for sure viable. But here's the catch. That original plan, as great as it was, had some pretty big limits. It only applied to buildings built before 1975, and it was almost entirely focused on just the downtown area. So for any developer outside that little zone, the whole process was just a nightmare of red tape and uncertainty. And that brings us to today's revolution, a brand new citywide ordinance that completely changes the game. So let's break down the 4 key updates that are really poised to reshape the entire city. Okay, so here are the 4 big game changers. 1, it's now citywide. 2, there's a new 15-year age rule. 3, way more types of buildings can qualify. And 4, and this is probably the most important one, the approval process is way, way faster. Let's dig into each one. First up, the scope is just massive now. We're not just talking about downtown anymore. These new rules apply to commercial corridors everywhere, from Westwood and the Valley all the way to South LA and the Harbor District. This unlocks potential in pretty much every single neighborhood. Second, the age requirement has totally changed. Now, any commercial building that's at least 15 years old can be converted. This creates this really smart rolling eligibility. It means a building from the early 2010s is on the table right now, and every single year, a whole new batch of buildings becomes available. Third, and this is where it gets really creative, it's not just about offices anymore. The new rules open the door to converting industrial buildings, retail shops, even old parking garages. This allows for some incredible creativity at the neighborhood level. I mean, just imagine your local, kind of sad, half-empty strip mall becoming a cool, mixed-use community hub. And finally, the 4th big change, and honestly, this is the one that makes it all work. It's all about speed. By letting qualifying projects skip those super long reviews and hearings, the city has removed the single biggest hurdle for developers, that killer timeline uncertainty. We're talking about cutting the approval process from years down to just months. This is huge. Okay, so even with this fantastic new rulebook, the actual work is incredibly complex. A building that was designed for cubicles has a completely different logic than one designed for homes. It is so much more than just swapping desks for beds. So developers are up against 3 major hurdles. First, you've got to solve the natural light problem. Office buildings often have these really deep floor plates, which is terrible for apartments. You need windows. Second, what in the world do you do with these massive parking structures? And third, you have to bring the entire building, everything from the plumbing to the HVAC systems, up to modern accessibility codes, and that is absolutely non-negotiable. And you can really see right here how a building's age directly hits the project's cost and complexity. Those pre-1975 buildings, they often need really expensive seismic retrofits. But a post-2000 building, well, it might need very little structural work, which can save millions of dollars and dramatically speed up the timeline. Of course, none of this matters if the projects don't pencil out financially, right? So let's get to the bottom line and see how this amazing new opportunity stacks up against some very, very real economic headwinds. So to start, let's just get some context here. LA is already the 3rd busiest city in the entire country for these office to apartment conversions. We're talking nearly 4,400 units already in the works. So that shows you there's a real established appetite for these projects. But, and this is a big but, right now, developers are facing a perfect storm. You've got higher interest rates making loans way more expensive. Construction costs for labor and materials are through the roof. There are new taxes on property sales adding another hurdle. And on top of all that, there's just general uncertainty about where the rental market is even headed. These are serious challenges. But despite all those challenges, there's a really powerful counter-argument here from an industry expert. The basic math can still work because you're starting with an existing structure. As Jeremy Baker from Letter 4 says, you already have the bones. And that fact alone can shave millions of dollars off her project budget compared to building something from the ground up. And this isn't just a theory on paper. The impact of this ordinance is already taking shape all across Los Angeles. So let's look at how these conversions are moving from blueprints into reality and actually reshaping the city's future. Here's a perfect real-world example, right in Sherman Oaks. You have probably seen it 1,000 times from the 101 freeway, that iconic, kind of crazy-looking brutalist inverted pyramid that used to be the Sunkist headquarters. Well, thanks to this new ordinance, it's being transformed into 95 apartments. How cool is that? And developers are using some really clever strategies to make the math work, like something called phased occupancy. This just means they can convert a building floor by floor while the existing office tenants actually stay put. This provides that crucial rental income during the really expensive construction phase. It's pretty smart. When you really think about it, LA's plan to turn offices into homes is a bold step. It's a creative solution that was born from a crisis. It forces us to look at our cities differently, and it asks a really fascinating question. As our world continues to change, what other hidden assets are right there in front of us, just waiting to be reimagined?